If you're just joining us, again, apologies for a little bit of a late start while we sort out some technical issues. And yeah, my name is Michael Tai, and I'll be facilitating the first part of this web session. And I'd like to just get started. A warm welcome to you, the official welcome to the GEO-LDN Technology Innovation Competition. We'll be telling you a lot about the competition today. Maybe you want to activate your text chat by clicking next to your name, and you should be able to see the text chat window. There are some text chat messages coming in now. You should be able to see the text chat. Designing use planning solution, and today, again, the main event is being held, or this event is being held in English. You do have the option, maybe not yet activated, by clicking on the language options there. If you click on that the globe symbol, you should be able to click on to your preferred language. We have French and Spanish available today. And like I said, you might have to bear with us as we are having a little bit of technical difficulties getting the interpreters logged on properly. Again, please do bear with us. We recommend that you do not mute the original audio, but mute your French or Spanish option separately. So if you see there that globe symbol here, maybe your chat pane is covering that. Maybe you want to drag your chat pane over to the right or left or down below so you can see the full slide here. You should see that kind of globe symbol. If you click on that interpretation symbol, you should be able to click on the language that you prefer. We would like to know who is with us today, and sometimes when you log on, a different name appears, or maybe you're logging on under someone else's account and so forth. So we'd like to know your name in the list of participants, and also your organization. So your name, your surname, your organization. We'd like you to change that if it's not appearing as your name, surname, and organization. And to do that, if you look at the top right of the slide, you see here the participants icon. If you click on that, and then if you see below that the rename option, you should be able to change your name or change the name that appears to your real name. So please take a moment to do that, just so we can follow who's contributing what and who's asking which questions and so forth. In case we need to follow up with you, we'll have an easy way to do that.
So Michael, so far
Yes.
we have the French interpretation, the Spanish interpretation working, but not the French one yet. So
okay.
We can maybe wait a couple more minutes.
Yes, okay. You have a list, not the list of participants, but you should be able to see a participant icon at the bottom of your screen. If you click on that, that should open up that option. And again, your chat panel may be covering the image of that on the actual PowerPoint that we're also broadcasting. So you may have to move your chat window around. Okay, we see that Suchi, thank you for introducing yourself in the chat pane. I will get, we'll come back to this in a moment. So as you see here, live online events. Lots of excitement here. Here we have interpreter and renaming things going on. Okay, maybe you can give me a quick yes or no so I can see in the text chat. Can you give me a yes? Yes, I can see the participant icon and I can see where I can change my name, or no, I cannot see it. Please give me just a simple yes or no and make sure that you're broadcasting to all panelists and attendees. Okay, no, so many people cannot see that. Okay, so we will have to have a workaround on that. And Mahir, perhaps you have an idea as to how we can work around that.
Still trying to connect with the interpreters. So.
Okay. Okay, perhaps we could work on that a little bit as we get into the session now, so as to not to lose too much time on that. But thank you very much also for being proactive and having a workaround in the text chat. That also works very well. But just a little bit later on when we do pollings and so forth, we would like to have the real name. So let's let Mahir work on the interpreters at the moment, and we'll go on and warm up a little bit with you. Just some other information for you for your orientation, in case you're not familiar with Zoom. Of course, we use the Q&A tool as well. You'll be able to see when somebody poses a question that will light up in red, the Q&A window. We will be answering your questions throughout the session. We might be answering those as in text form, but also different panelists might be answering according to their expertise, and we may also be answering in voice a little bit later on. If you take a look over at the upper right, you see here the polling tool. We want to make this as interactive as possible, and we'll be using the polls quite actively. We'll get to one of those in a minute, and there we ask you to just click on the appropriate answer. And then below that, you see the Zoom chat and the icon of that. And as a lot of you have already found the chat here, I can see from your contributions there, we'll be using that also to assure that there is some interactivity in our session today. Please, of course, ask questions anytime during the meeting. Please, if you have a question, use the Q&A for any kind of questions. You just simply type in your question and click send. And again, as I said, we'll reply to that or also reply in voice. You may also like to vote on questions. So if you see a question that's particularly relevant or mirrors your own question, you can give a thumbs up on that as well. And that helps us to prioritize the importance of some of the questions to most of you. And this may also be included in an FAQ after the event. So to get started, let's do a little ice breaking and have an opportunity for all of you. We see here 69 attendees, for all of you to use your imagination a little bit and just kind of ease into our meeting here on a positive note. My question to you is, what do you see? Use your imagination and type into the text chat, what do you see? You might need to blur your vision a little bit, be imaginative. There is no right or wrong answer. So what do you see? Please type it into the text chat. And again, please make sure your text chat answers are to all panelists and attendees so that we can all see them and make sure that all panelists and attendees. Thank you. Some of you see pixels, some of you see a coast, a blurred fig or figure. Jalal, I'm not sure. And yes, what else do you see? Let me sharpen that up a little bit for you. And any other ideas? Okay, we're starting to see dogs and islands and pixels, maybe more dogs coming in there, a lakeshore, maybe vacation time for some of you, a body of water, maybe fish. swimming there, and a dinosaur, and still, whoops, and yes, flipping ahead, what do you see? We have here a colored mosaic, maybe a mosaic floor, and satellite imagery. See, and yes, we see a jumper, and this to tie into our topic today. Some of you might be familiar with the Fosbury flip. Until 1968, most jumpers in the Olympic competitions jumped over the high bar, kind of belly side down, until Dick Fosbury tried out a new technique and went over quite unconventionally and higher, winning the gold medal, doing the Fosbury flip, a reverse kind of flip. And that is our maybe kind of metaphor to you all today. We will be talking about competition, and we will be talking about innovative solutions. So maybe let the Fosbury flip inspire you today. In the chat pane, again, please just take a moment and tell us why are you interested in this competition? And just a couple of keywords, just maybe a sentence or so. Give us the reason as to why you're interested in the competition. And again, please select all panelists and attendees from that drop-down list there, the two drop-down list. Thank you, Jalal. You're very quick, very fast. Great. What about the rest of you? We have 68 attendees there to learn from others. Great. Thank you, Freddie. Yes, and so again, why are you interested in this competition? Just let me quickly check with Mal. How are we doing with the interpreters? Are they both on board at this point?
Doesn't look like.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Ivan. Our compliments to the Spanish interpretation. Muchas gracias. That's good to know. Yes, if you're a speaker of French, please feel free to also enter your answer in French in the text chat, just as a kind of workaround to that. Right. Thank you for your contributions there. I'd like to find out a little bit more about what stakeholder group you identify most strongly with. And in order to do that, I'm going to open a poll, and the polling tool is pretty self-explanatory. Let me just launch that first poll here. All you have to do is to click on your, let's say, most appropriate answer there. Are you a policymaker, a land use planner, Earth observations data expert, perhaps another technical expert, or perhaps something completely different, someone completely different? And I see about almost half of you have voted so far. And keep it open for another few seconds. And I would like to close in about 10 seconds. So if you have not voted so far, please do vote now before we close the poll. I'm going to end the poll at this point and show you the results so we can see what the attendee group kind of looks like today. So as you see here, most of you Earth observations and data experts. Thank you for taking part in that. I've also got another question for you. What type of organization do you represent? And again, same procedure. I'm going to be opening a new poll. And you should be able to see that now. Okay. Another 10 seconds, please. Please vote if you haven't voted yet. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now. And again, share the results with you. See a lot of people here from private companies, also many government and planning authority people as well. So, and thank those of you who maybe are latecomers for entering your information in the text chat above here, helping us find out a little bit more about you. One more question for you, and are you or your organization considering participating in the competition? And let me just open that third poll. And again, same procedure as before. Are you or your organization considering participating? And those of you who are voting, maybe, hopefully we can convince you to do so by the end of our virtual event today. Okay, again, give you another 5 seconds or so. If anybody hasn't voted yet, please do vote now. Okay, and again, we see here that yes, many of you are indeed considering getting involved in the competition. Great, great news. I want to hand over the microphone right now to one of our guest speakers, Neil Sims, Program Manager of Space Technology. And thank you, Baron, for also updating people in the text chat on what they could be doing if they've arrived late.
Thanks, Michael. Hello, everyone. So I'm Neil Sims, and Program Manager is my day job. But in my spare time, I really love to work on this particular problem, which is a really important one globally, and something that I feel very passionate about and very authentic when I engage in this space. So it's fantastic to see so many of you joining the call today. I think the first thing that we need to do is, that we're going to do is hear from Stephen Ramage. Is that correct, everyone? Have I got that right in the sequence here? Stephen is the Head of External Relations at GEO, which is, of course, the home of the GEO-LDN initiative and the facility through which we're doing all of this great work. So, Stephen, take it away.
Cheers, Neil, and thank you to the organisers for the invitation to welcome everyone to this virtual briefing session. The Group on Earth Observations, also known as GEO, is an intergovernmental partnership working with and on behalf of 111 United Nations member states. GEO works on major planetary issues that relate to our current and future Earth system challenges. We work with countries to understand the value and usefulness of Earth observations for research, for policy, for decisions, and for action. In order to provide a framework for the vast range of activities that cut across the GEO community, such as agriculture, biodiversity, climate change, disaster risk reduction, forestry, water resources management, etc., there is a GEO work programme. And this is the implementation mechanism for achieving much of the GEO vision and mission, as well as engaging our members and partners. Currently, there are more than 60 activities in the GEO work programme. So long-term sustainable development is one of the GEO priorities, and as such, the GEO Land Degradation Neutrality, GEO-LDN initiative in the GEO work programme is working on the UN 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. In particular, working on Sustainable Development Goal, SDG 15, Life on Land. So in terms of the major planetary issues, land use and land change provide useful indicators for terrestrial health. GEO-LDN also links closely to other activities in the GEO work programme, namely GEO-GLAM for global agricultural monitoring, looking at food security and addressing SDG 2, zero hunger. Other important links with GEO activities such as GEO-GLOWS, which is global water sustainability, which includes work on SDG 6 for clean water. We also work on urban resilience via SDG 11, safe and sustainable cities with EO for SDG. And essentially all of these are areas where land availability and land use, land change play an important role. Additionally, in the, I've lost my screen. Additionally, in the GEO work programme, there are activities linked to biodiversity via GEO-BON, which is Biodiversity Observation Network, and also ecosystem accounting via EO for EA, which is linked to the United Nations System of Environmental Economic Accounting, SEA. All of these work programme activities are important for linking the science and technology from an Earth observations perspective. And this means space-based data as well as in situ observations and models. In addition to the technical aspects, networking and capacity development are also huge advantages offered via collaboration across the GEO community. So this includes opportunities for funding and resource mobilization, as well as private sector engagement. A decision support framework is used to encourage countries to stabilize or reduce their extent of degraded lands through conservation, sustainable management, and restoration activities. And in the GEO-LDN implementation plan, which everyone can access, it's freely available online, it states, a coordinated response is needed from the Earth observation and geospatial community to assist countries and other actors, particularly those with limited Earth observation capacities, to carry out assessments and implement LDN activities. Increased access to large Earth observation data sets, targeted data products, improved analytical capacity, and practical tools are needed to help countries set and implement LDN targets, including to support policy planning and investment decisions. So the GEO-LDN technology competition is a perfect way to stimulate innovation and solutions that support land use decisions from subnational to national and regional levels around the world. And as such, we are really pleased to support this important GEO-LDN initiative. So thank you and enjoy the rest of the session.
Thanks very much, Stephen.
Thanks so much. Michael, did we skip over a couple of things there that we were going to do? Is the quote and the agenda?
Yes, when I handed over to you, the slides jumped. So we missed the agenda and we missed the goals of of our web session today. Would you like me to go back to those?
We'll do it very quickly.
Just
yeah,
quickly,
that's fine. Yeah, thank you.
So you should be seeing them now. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So was the agenda before that, or was that the first one? No, I'm very sorry. Thank you, everyone. Okay, that's
the
fine.
agenda here.
Okay.
Here, okay.
Okay, very sorry everyone, thank you. If you're getting a sense that we're learning how to do this in this complex environment, then welcome, that is correct. What I wanted, Michael did that poll a few seconds ago and we had 42% of maybes there, I think it was, who were considering entering this competition. And if there's anything I can do to inspire you to join this initiative or to be a part of it, I think these few words encapsulate the kind of impact that we can have through this space. So, you know, about 20% of the world's vegetated area is degraded, and a lot of that is through land and water use and management activities. And there's 1.3 billion people are trapped on degrading agricultural land globally. Our aim really is to make the lives of those people better. And, you know, we're starting this process right now. So please do join us in this. There's 123 countries that are signatories to the UNCCD LDN initiative. All of those countries will be, these tools that we make together will be made available to all of those countries to support LDN initiatives globally. And the indicator that sort of underpins part of LDN is one of the most reported SDG indicators with 141 national reports in 2018. We can have significant impact on the livelihoods of a lot of people in those countries and on land use practices, and you know, and really try and improve things for those people. Thanks, Michael. Next slide, please. So really today we want to, you know, get a shared understanding of what LDN is, and there was a bit of a giveaway there. You saw a slide with Baron or his face on it a few minutes ago, and we'll be hearing from Baron about a lot of the details of LDN, which underpins the important work that we need to do in terms of the technical applications of what we're talking about. And of course, the competition that we're talking about, we're going to explain some of the rules to you. And one of the opportunities here is to really share your skills and your needs so that we can match you together with people who are maybe complementary in their skills, so that we can get better outcomes all around, including in the software tools that we develop. Next slide, thank you. So yes, we're a little bit behind schedule. I'm okay with that, and it's 9 p.m. here, so I hope the rest of the world is going okay with it as well. Thanks, Stephen. We've heard from you. In a few moments, we'll hear from Baron, and this is worth paying attention to because it underpins what we need to implement in the tools that we're describing. We'll have a bit of a Q&A session, and then we'll have a very short break. And when we come back, we'll hear from Alex Zvolev, who's my co-chair in Working Group 3 in the GEO-LDN initiative, some of the details of what we need to slot into, again, more questions, and then some opportunities to connect up with one another again. So I think now we move on to Baron. And yes, thanks, Baron. Apologies for the delay there.
No problem. I assume I'm gonna share my screen now, correct?
That's correct.
It's not letting me do it yet. I think something has to be released on your side, maybe, Michael.
I will stop sharing and
okay, there we go.
Share.
So you can start now, Baron.
We can see it loading.
Right.
We can see it, and
Trying to open it now. And I have to do this little maneuver. Okay, you should see my opening slide, correct?
we see both now. Okay, now we see it full view. Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
So I'm going to jump right into information you already know. I'm going to go pretty quickly through it, but basically we all know that the planet sustainable development goals support all others. But what is not often thought about when we think about climate and biodiversity, et cetera, is it's land that actually links the planet to people. Therefore, it's either central to the problem or what we're trying to do, central to the solution. Can we accelerate all SDGs by maximizing, optimizing what we do with land. And we know that each individual goal is good, but what we don't think about is that actually there are synergies and trade-offs among the 17 goals. And if we look at goal 15 in particular, which is life on land, where land degradation neutrality is part of target 15.3, we realize that there's a lot going on in terms of synergies and trade-offs. The top synergies are not surprising. It's not surprising that, for example, no poverty and quality education are running together in terms of being synergistic. But what we really should be aware of is that the trade-offs, the top trade-offs, are not surprising either. And sure enough, it's land and it's unsustainable consumption and production. If we could get something that brings these together, then maybe we can get at synergies there as well. So how do we look at this in terms of land degradation neutrality? Well, we base what we wish to maintain on natural capital. And if we define that, which I think everyone on the call already has this, but it's important to think about the links between natural capital, the flows of ecosystem services, and the benefits to society. Now, here's our first test question, and I don't know, I'm hoping this poll is available. If not, we'll just let you do it through my slides. When land is degraded, we lose natural capital, and then therefore we lose these benefits. So if we know in advance that desertification is defined as land degradation in dry lands, then what is land degradation? And I don't know if we can pop this poll up. I think we've got it in advance. Sara, I don't know if you could comment. If not, I'll just keep moving.
It should be available. Michael, you're muted now.
Okay. I do not think that that is the poll that it's available, but let me, oh no, I'm sorry, it is. Here we go.
Pop it up, because I think the
Sorry,
results
there
will
we
be
go.
interesting.
Yeah.
If you all could just take a minute to answer this one, I would be very grateful. And I think, Michael, you're the one seeing the results. I'm not...
Right. We've got about 35 people so far, so 50% have voted.
Jump in, everybody. Be brave.
Yes.
I can tell you up front that even inside the Secretariat of the UNCCD, we get this wrong. That's why I put this poll in place.
Okay, we've got 75% so far, 76%, 79%.
A few holdouts, and a few people maybe, sometimes on mobile, it's hard to get the poll to work. So,
right.
Yeah.
And you didn't mention the big
whenever
prize.
you're ready, Michael.
Okay, so we'll end the polling there with 59%, 59 people having voted, and I'll share the results. And as we see, Baron.
So this is a very, very common mix. Actually, the one that says 31% normally actually gets even lower than this, and there's even greater on all of the above. But the answer to this, and you can close now this results, the answer is only declining productivity of land. And this is where we get some of the problems when we think about land degradation. Spreading deserts, deserts are natural. Of course they're natural. So we're not concerned about the spreading of deserts and all these other qualities, which I'll try to, oh, I'm stuck. Come on. There we go. This is what land degradation is not. None of these photographs are actually signs of land degradation. And notice that that includes 2 previous logos of the UNCCD. That shows you how off we can be with this. This is what land degradation looks like on the ground. And I'll give you just a short, this is a wonderful paper led by Steve Prince that can give you a good sense of this. But there are these kinds of things that we're talking about that relate to land degradation. We're talking about the human impact on land that results in the loss of productivity. Define any way that you would like to define productivity. Having said that, what is land transformation? And here we go to IPBES, who were the first among us. Well, actually, there was an internal one called the Global Land Outlook, but in terms of the intergovernmental panels, IPBES took on land degradation and land restoration, and they recognized that the distinction between degradation and transformation was incredibly important today because we have very little land left to convert. And yet, the rate of conversion is accelerating. Now think about that. If we only have 30% of the land left to convert, and most of it's marginal, and we're still converting it, where are we headed? We're headed here. And this is us. This is the coffee you had this morning, whatever else you may have eaten so far today. Our consumption eats land. And if we know that, then we know that the pressure isn't simply, play the violin and look at the farmer or the rancher doing something wrong on the landscape, which is the traditional view of land degradation. But the reality is we are eating this land. And this means that the problem isn't a management problem, it's a planning problem, which is why we are where we are today. Look at this. This is one snapshot in time. This map changes every day. If you go to trace.earth with an S, you can see how it changes every day. But we are consuming the land of others. We are exporting our land degradation. And this is exacerbated by climate change. So we have a synergy and conflict here in trying to manage climate and address land degradation, because some of our solutions could end up consuming more land. What can we do? There obviously is no planet B. We can make better decisions. And that's where this competition comes into play. As I mentioned before, we're now experts at sustainable land management. There's only a small incremental improvements going to come from new science on how to manage land. No matter what the issue is, we have the solutions. But that doesn't mean that those solutions are being put in place. And certainly it doesn't mean they're being put in place in the right places. This slide lets you know the second very common comment is we can't scale up the solutions. Well, part of scaling up the solutions is not simply getting the word out. It's about entering the space where land decisions are made. And this is the other side of the equation. We're not only talking about managing land well, we're talking about fixing what has been lost. By a number of different analyses, basically 1 in 5 hectares can no longer be used for the intended use once we converted it. So we're actually hurting ourselves in both directions. But the good news is we know how to fix land. We know how to restore land. We have the techniques. And we even have a decade behind us. So we're in a wonderful place to put all of the global resources towards using land for part of the solution. And the IPCC, in their special report, which came out last year, identified land degradation neutrality with high confidence as a mechanism that can be used to address these multiple benefits if we, again, enter the planning space. So how can we keep land in balance and thereby other things like food, energy, environment, et cetera, in balance, and navigate the inevitable trade-offs that the SDGs represent? Well, it means we need a balanced approach. We need something that anticipates new land degradation, even as we plan to reverse past degradation. We anticipate carbon in the atmosphere. We anticipate biodiversity loss. We do not project land degradation, but we must, or we're never going to solve this problem. We need to think about trade-offs, as I've already described. And then ultimately, we need something that will then say, well, where's the right place for that solution? And what scale should we be pursuing that? And that is the good news here, is it's framed, scientifically grounded, and adopted by all the countries that are party to the convention. And that means all the countries that are working towards this problem, where we can actually look at this much more holistically. There's the definition for land degradation neutrality. And what you want to keep in mind here is that the vision is about a combination of human well-being, food security, and healthy ecosystems. Right there, we've got trade-offs in the definition of what we're trying to maintain. And as I mentioned earlier, we use natural capital as the basis of what we're trying to maintain, and we monitor all the ecosystem services from land. Now we come to the heart of the matter, why you're on this call. And that is, we need a mechanism in any no net loss approach. We need a mechanism for neutrality. And we call this in LDN counterbalancing. If you come from biodiversity offsets or climate offsets world, you use the word offsetting. But in this framework, we don't use any words with baggage. We don't use any words that already have positions and politicization. Counterbalancing basically is done at the end, right? We're looking at all the combination of land uses and interventions, and we're trying to make sure that all anticipated losses can be counterbalanced by gains in the same land type for all land types. That concept at the end is like for like. That's meant to keep us from consuming land of a certain land type to protect others. It's what we call a safeguard, and I'll talk more about that. Well, embedded in this neutrality mechanism is planning, and we specifically use the term integrated land use planning, which was actually the term during the MDGs. Now we use words like spatial planning, territorial planning, and many, many other terms, but all of them can be grouped under an umbrella where we look at all objectives simultaneously. In other words, we put the municipal planners, the conservation planners, the ag planners, etc., in the room at the same time. It's a brave idea, it's ambitious, but it's essential. It's necessary for where we're going. It's about having the right information to do the right things in the right places at the right scale. That is LDN. And if we do that, we need to look at aspects such as degradation status, land potential, resilience, socioeconomic conditions, gender responsiveness. Obviously, land degradation correlates with gender inequality, so it's fundamental to what we're trying to address. And then we need to optimize our spatial mix of land uses and possible interventions to achieve no net loss, but also to optimize all of those other objectives, climate, biodiversity, etc. We put this right at the top, and this goes back to the report that came out before IPCC and IPBES. Planning drives all the rest of what you see on this slide. There's a report by the Science Policy Interface of the UNCCD that came out last year that dives into this, that looks at the entire enabling environment for land degradation neutrality. And integrated land use planning was identified as key, navigating these trade-offs, integrating security into the process, bringing in the multi-stakeholder participation, etc. Okay, to come back to that mechanism, which is what you will be designing if you pursue this competition, we're talking about the anticipation of what might happen in each unit of a land type across a country or region or watershed, and trying to make sure, knowing that in some cases, like the first one on this, we're not going to be able to do anything because we don't have the resources, whatever the reason in the planning process, that we are able to identify other land units where we can achieve a gain. Loss and gain here has to do with significant change. This is part of the monitoring process, which I'll touch on, but is not really emphasized here. Here we're talking about looking into the future and imagining what will happen with the best possible information we have, no matter what that information is. Another thing that's key to LDN is what we call the response hierarchy. Many people call this a mitigation hierarchy, but we're not in the space of carbon. We're not in the space of biodiversity. There is only one option for any given piece of land. If it's not degraded, you better avoid that degradation. You better protect it. Obviously, you can't restore it because it's not degraded yet. And that is, prevention is better than the cure. Reduce has to do with our management, doing it better so that we don't raise the risk of degradation. We don't create a loss inadvertently. And then all the rest of our resources needs to go into reversing past degradation. That's restoration and rehabilitation. Everyone always asks about what we measure. Well, take your 3 fingers, lick the tips of them, put them in the air. This is a national to global level monitoring. This is about trying to give the best indication of land degradation. And when land degradation is different everywhere, it's manifest locally, we use 3 essential variables, which are measured by all countries, as was talked about before: land cover change, land productivity dynamics, and trends in soil organic carbon. This process is tied to those ecosystem services. They've been mapped, and there's a reasonable mapping of all of those 3 indicators and all ecosystem services that come from land. But we're not limited to that because it isn't comprehensive. We can add, any country can add additional indicators as needed. This is what it looks like if you mapped the world for these indicators. This goes back quite some time. It probably looks much better today in terms of data quality. And these add up to SDG indicator 15.3.1. So this is where land degradation neutrality contributes to the goal of life on land. We also, through partnership with Conservation International, have built very straightforward, wide open access tools to make it very easy for countries to actually calculate those indicators, compare local data sets, recalculate those indicators, do the best job they can with the best data, but in a globally harmonized way. Okay, I've talked about monitoring, but I want to emphasize monitoring is not enough. Bottom line is we monitor every 4 years, and by the time we monitor, the land use has already changed. It's too late. So we need something like what you all are thinking about doing, which is building neutrality mechanisms into the wide range of tools that are used by policymakers and planners. There's no one solution here. There are many different types of tools. Nationally, they vary country by country, but even seeding 2 or 3 of those tools with this mechanism to make it easy to see losses and gains projected out, to look at scenarios, to look at those trade-offs would make a huge difference to our impacts on land. And then doing things that are clever, like linking land administration systems, cadastre, with environmental monitoring systems. You would be surprised how rarely these are linked. That could make a huge difference to achieving land degradation neutrality. As I've mentioned before, this is about pulling these common interests with competing demands for land into the same room. I'll make a comment here on this. You know, for the Biodiversity Convention, the most important globally accepted and achieved Aichi target has to do with area of land that's protected. And then a group of scientists came out with a study and showed that a much smaller footprint of the globe could have achieved much higher biodiversity. What does that mean? Did they choose the wrong places? No. But it does mean that the next places we choose must be optimized because there's not enough land left. We've got to put the corridor for biodiversity in exactly the right place. And we're not doing that now. We've got to solve that problem. And that goes for climate change, trying to use biofuels, et cetera. It's all about optimization. None of this works without effective land governance. So some of this mechanism isn't the simple loss and gain problem. It's about empowering the governance to be successful, to actually be succeeding with this process. And as I mentioned, every no net loss agreement has what all the other ones call accounting rules, right? The rules of the game, the things that are designed to keep you from having perverse or unintended outcomes. And inside the conceptual framework for land degradation neutrality, these are called guiding principles. I just have circled some of those that have to do with people. Notice planning is right there in the process.
10 minutes, Baron.
And so, kind of to close this up, I bring back all the points, right? If we have responsible governance in the middle, if we're thinking about social, economic, and environmental benefits simultaneously, if we're putting the tools in the hands of planners and policymakers to actually consider these automatically every time that these decisions are being made, then we can do all of this. We can maintain natural capital. We can take care of all ecosystem services that flow from land, at least in a more optimal way than we're doing today. And by keeping land in balance, we can keep food, carbon, biodiversity, energy, you name it. It's tied to this. And then finally, we can have synergies across the conventions, which is always talked about. You're backed in this by all countries in the world. They don't all pursue, through government approval, land degradation neutrality, but all of them have embraced this as a voluntary framework. Everybody's behind this general idea, and each country pursues it in a different way. And the map is looking pretty good, right? We're 123 countries that have gone after this. And a lot of those countries in the gray, which are mostly developed countries, are actually pursuing LDN, but not necessarily in a locked-in legislative way. So we've got a lot of momentum here, as was pointed out by Neil. And my last comment to close this is that this entire competition was born out of an idea that came from scientists who recognized that this was the weak point. If we couldn't seed the innovation ecosystem with LDN, then even the best aspects of it would never be realized. Hence, they made the request of parties to consider pushing for some kind of a demonstration. And that we use as in our formal terminology was a decision of our country of parties. It's part of the SPI objectives, but luckily GEO has embraced this. So it's much larger than what was envisioned initially by the SPI, and it fits inside of the work that the SPI is currently doing, which is focused on integrated land use planning, doing an assessment to try to bolster policymakers' capability of improving our integrated approach to this. And that's all from the science side. Thank you very much. I pass it over to Neil and Sada for the next steps.
Thanks so much, Baron. It's always fascinating to see this right in front of us. What we've got now is a chance to ask a few questions. And I believe the best way to do this is through the question and answer panel. There is an icon, or there possibly is an icon across the bottom of your screen next to the chat and the participants button, if you've got those, where you can enter a question there. And then what we're going to try and do is feel free, if your native language is Spanish or French, to enter your questions in your native language if that's easier for you. we have the interpreters here who will be able to help us, we hope, and we'll just work our way through this and make sure that we can address your questions appropriately.
Just a quick comment, Neil, you'll notice in that some questions were dismissed. This was at the very beginning when you were answering a question for us, so we actually did work on that. And I'm understanding that all of you do have this Q&A icon on the bottom of your screen based on feedback that you've given. So everybody should be able to do this now.
Yeah, thanks, Baron. The question and answer panel seemed to be the liveliest point of text there for a little while as well. So that's all very good. So if anyone has any questions there, yes, and we're getting a couple coming in now. Can you see those, Baron? I'm thinking.
I can, and I'll let you,
yeah.
If there's a lot, I'll let you push me to what you want me to try to address.
Yeah, so look, I'm going to answer the second one first. So Adnane Labaki, maybe I've got that incorrect. I apologize for that, is asking whether we're going to select a particular area of interest as the study area. At this stage, the answer to that is no. We're happy for you to, present your system describing an area that you're familiar with at this stage. Brett Bryan has asked a question about what baggage do offset schemes bring such that the policy instrument language has been changed to avoid it. Baron, are you able to answer that one?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So you have to recognize that the UNCCD is a global convention just like the others, but we're a coffee break in the budget of the other ones, right? So we're never going to be in the position to ask anyone to do something differently than what they're already doing. We need to leverage what's there. But sometimes when you leverage what's there, you bring the political baggage that comes with it. So for example, the word offset zooms people straight into carbon offsets and markets, etc. Whereas everything done in the UNCCD is voluntary. And the reality is, because this is at the national to global level in terms of the reporting process, it really doesn't fit that model very well. It's not about, I mean, some countries have chosen to put it into their markets, but that's an option, that's a choice of a country. So by choosing a term like counterbalancing instead of offsetting, we don't get anyone thinking about markets. They just think about the problem of keeping gains and losses in balance. That's an example. Another one is, for example, mitigation. We use reduce degradation instead of mitigate, because mitigate shoots people either into the climate change definition or the drought definition, both of which are different. We tried to keep away from those kinds of debates and be in a more common space.
Thanks, Baron. Brett, I know you'll ask another question there if that hasn't quite answered your question. We're getting quite a few questions through here.
You want me to just jump in, Neil?
Well, yeah, look, what about, so Baron, you're being asked there, can you elaborate a little bit on the watershed scale and relevance for LDN?
That's a really good one, Alain. And the interesting thing is that it's one of the primary topics on the agenda, which is not a UNCCD agenda, although we're contributing to it, on the Group on Earth Observations GEO-LDN initiative agenda. In other words, if we can solve the problem nationally to globally in terms of reporting on land degradation neutrality, monitoring it, which we're not doing bad with, as was pointed out by Neil, then how do we make all of that relevant nationally to locally? And one aspect of that is exactly what we're doing here, right? If we take it from the monitoring point of view, then it has to do with making sure that the indicators that are used at the national to global level are considered at the project level and in an appropriate way, and then inform the national process. That's an institutional thing more than anything else. But what really counts is at the planning level, right? Projecting where we're headed and trying to do the right things in the right places at the right scale. that is very much a local level challenge, all the way down to the watershed, where your options obviously become more limited the smaller that the watershed is. But the desire to keep that watershed in balance can be chosen by the watershed organization, or it could be scaled back out larger, our watershed fitting in with several others. How can we make sure we contribute to this national and global goal? That's the idea that we're trying to address here with this competition.
Great, thanks so much, Baron. We have a question here from Kristen Williams, who has asked, how is the concept of LDN different at its core to ESD? I don't even know what ESD is.
Neither do I. I'm checking it now.
All right, maybe we'll come back to that one in a few minutes.
Environmentally sustainable development, I believe, but I had to look it up as well.
If that's what it is, it's a very, very good question. So livelihoods is embedded, and all of that framework, sustainable livelihoods, is embedded inside the framework. But obviously it doesn't have its direct role here in gains and losses, except when you start to realize that there are trade-offs. And if I take this, now I'm going to project into the future, let's look at COVID-19 and the pandemic and the fact that our global systems have lost an enormous amount of resilience. Where are we going to make that up? The only place that we can make up at least part of it is local regional systems. And the only way we make it up is if we optimize what we do inside those systems so that our interventions create jobs, that they're physically located where they need to be located, et cetera, right? So that's where they're different things, of course, LDN and environmentally sustainable development, but this is where they connect and where we can actually leverage both worlds to achieve multiple goals, multiple benefits.
Thanks, Baron. Lusliged Tamene, I'm so sorry if I've butchered that one, has asked, how do we account the socio-economic challenge of those affected if we restore far from an area of degradation? So I guess the issues really there are how tangled up the whole LDN thing is with socio-economic issues, and probably there's a spatial aspect to that as well though, right?
So it's kind of,
I keep pointing to you, Baron. I'm so sorry. I'm bombarding you with all these, but
they're fabulous. And what I love about this question is, for me, it makes me wonder, is this a solution that one of you might propose? So think about this. I mean, I cannot speak universally because planning processes differ in every country in the world. It's extraordinary how different they are from each other, country by country. But having said that, we all have experienced a planning process that felt rather local, not only in terms of its geographic scope, but also in terms of its goals. I mean, think about this. Municipal planners are very concerned about development. They're concerned about creating jobs. They have a variable for the environment. They're not analyzing biodiversity the way conservation planners are doing this, right? So if we had a mechanism that helped with losses and gains, but also had technology that allowed what you were doing in that local or less regional process to tap into the regional plan or the national plan to understand conceptually or even with data, where does this fit? We would empower all of those local planning processes to be part in step with these larger goals. That's the kind of, I mean, the question I'm wondering is it a solution that one of you might try to address?
Thanks, Baron. Look, there's a few questions coming in about that I think are really about the particular details of the tools that we're asking for. So whether it needs to be one tool and what it needs to integrate with and things like that. What I'll do with those questions, if that's okay, Alex Volif's going to be describing a bit of the information about some of those specifics after we have a break. And so maybe we'll cover some of those a bit later on if that's okay. So it'd be great to revisit these questions once we've heard a little bit about the sort of technical shape and size of the thing that we're after there. What else is there that's really interesting? There's so many fantastic questions here, and I'm trying not to dismiss any of them. So are we hoping to do this by 2030? Is that our goal date?
Yeah, well, I mean, I always smile when I hear that, and everybody says achieve LDN by 2030. But think about this. I mean, neutrality is neutral. It's basically saying don't get worse than we already are, right? Don't do any further harm in net terms. So really, we're doing it day by day. It's not all of a sudden lots of great activity that magically results in something by 2030. But where 2030 becomes really important is rehabilitation and restoration are not easy. So those take time, and they take time to show the potential for gains. They need to be planned in as early as possible in this process in order for them to contribute to achieving LDN by 2030. So that's the thinking process. But yes, we use now, technically speaking, it started in 2015, but we use now as the baseline, and we look at 2030 as when we want to make sure that we have achieved no net loss across different land types.
And of course, land uses will always change, you know, by human and other pressures. And so really what we're trying to do here, of course, is to build a tool that really encourages and makes it very easy for planning in national levels to account for that all the time, to be planning, to be looking at those areas that are likely to change and become degraded, and trying to prevent the degradation there, or, you know, identifying areas to restore and balance out areas that they know they've got to transform to reach some particular development objective, something like that. Is that fair enough to say, Baron?
Yes, I think that is very, very reasonable to say.
Okay, good, thank you. What is there? So what I think we might do, we're getting some more questions in here now, unless any of the other moderators think there are other questions that really relate, I think, to what we're trying to achieve here, the science of LDN, rather than about the tools at the moment.
Can I just make one general comment here, though?
Sure.
I notice about a lot of those comments, some which are zooming in on solutions. And what you all, if you look at the conceptual framework, you will realize that a lot of things that you're asking about here are touched on somewhere in this framework. The point being that your technical solution might be tied to the question that you're asking right here, right? That if you're saying payment for ecosystem services is good or not good, or lacks this, or should be focused on that, your tool, your solution could contribute to making that more viable. As long as it also helps with this losses and gains and navigating trade-offs, it fits this competition.
That's great. Thanks so much, Baron. Look, given that we started a little bit late, what I'd like to do is propose that we have a break now. Let's give it just a couple of minutes, if that's okay, enough chance to just get up and stretch the legs and then come back. So it's 48 past the hour now. Let's come back at 51. Let's give ourselves 3 minutes break. Is that long enough to get up and stretch the legs, do you think? And then we'll come back. We've got quite a bit to get through, and we'd like to get more interaction from you as well. So seeing no strong objections, I propose that we do that. Let's have a quick break and come back here at 51 past the hour in about 3 minutes' time. Hello. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Well, look, let's recommence. The next presenter that we've got with us, Alex, who's still a bit of a grey screen at the moment. Perhaps he's still, for me, this break gave me just enough time to play with my dog, say goodnight to my daughter, and clean my cat litter tray. So that was fantastic. So I'm looking forward to this next session though. But so Alex Volef, Conservation International and developer of the Trends.Earth system, which some of you may be aware of, and co-chair of Working Group 3 in the GEO-LDN initiative, and probably really the brains behind some of the mechanics of how this, what we're looking for, will come together. So Alex, if you're ready to go, take it away.
Great. And are you able to see my screen now, Neil?
Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect. I've got all kinds of panels. Let me move those off them. So thank you, Neil, and great to see so many interested folks online. So obviously, as you can see there on the screen, I'm with Conservation International, co-lead with Neil of Working Group 3 of the GEO-LDN initiative. And what I'd like to do is take just a few moments. I'm sure many of you are familiar already with what we've been doing within the GEO-LDN initiative. I want to take just a little bit of time to give a bit more introduction to what it is we're doing within Working Group 3, and then of course get into the details of the competition. So first of all, for those not familiar, of course you've already heard from Stephen earlier. Are you not seeing the slides, Sarah?
Yeah, landscape image, but not the slides, at least from my side.
Okay, let me stop the share and restart it.
It's probably up at the top where you've got two screens, maybe?
Yep. Apologies for that. Get these panels out of the way. Not sure what's going on now with my computer. Sorry about this, folks. I've lost my Zoom screen. Maybe in the interests of time, I'm not sure what's going on with my Zoom. All my controls have disappeared. Maybe, Michael, if you want to share, and I guess I can just tell you when to advance, this may be best.
Okay, I'm sharing now, but I can sometimes just sharing and then stop sharing. Let me, sometimes that.
We can see your screen now, Michael, the presentation.
Yes, I know. Thank you. Let me stop sharing again, Alex, and you can try again.
Great. And sorry, the problems for some reason.
Try again. Do you see, did that change anything?
No.
Okay.
So I guess if you could go to the next slide then.
Okay, 1 second.
Apologies for this, everyone.
Did you mean the overview?
And then my Zoom outright crashed. Sorry about that, but I can see your screen now, Michael. So we can advance to the next slide in interests of time. So you've already heard an introduction to the GEO-LDN initiative from Stephen earlier. What is it that we're doing? We're organized into 3 different working groups, and you could go to the working group slide, which is the next slide. And of course, the focus here is around working group 3, the data analytics working group. Just so folks are aware, there is a broader program of work here around capacity building through working group 1, and then also data quality standards through working group 2. And the idea here is really the GEO-LDN initiative is we've organized as this coherent body combining these 3 working groups such that the work that's being done around capacity building and data quality standards, there was a recent report published there out of working group 2, is directly informing the work that we do through working group 3 around data analytics. And our focus in working group 3, which is of course the most relevant to the competition here today, is really the development of tools and data sets to facilitate the achievement of LDN more broadly. So what are our objectives? So as I said, a key one, of course, is around the development of tools and data sets. Our focus here today and in this competition is around the neutrality mechanism, as Baron introduced earlier, but just to be aware, we do have a broader focus as well around support both of reporting around the LDN indicators to the UNCCD by countries, and then also facilitating the achievement of LDN through supporting, of course, planning as well. So if we can go to the next slide. So one key thing that we've recognized in Working Group 3 is there is a need for analytics, of course, across a range of scales. There's been much focus through the work that my institution has done, Conservation International, in collaboration with others around the Trends.Earth tool at the national scale. But of course, there is demand at finer spatial scales as well around project monitoring and the design and implementation of projects to achieve LDN. And so one thing that we're cognizant of that need across scales, and that's something that competitors, of course, should be aware of as well, that land use planning is something that really needs to look from an integrated perspective, both from a finer local landscape scale, as well as there's connections with national scales as well. Go to the next slide. So what are the key activities we're working on through Working Group 3? One, of course, is looking at where there's gaps. One key gap, of course, that we've already identified is around the land use planning side, which is something that we're hoping to address through this competition. Of course, in our current work and in the future, we also will be looking at trying to address areas where there are gaps in terms of data analytics more broadly as well. So certainly look to hear more from us. We also are very interested in facilitating collaboration. There are many projects that are relevant, of course, to LDN more broadly. So we're very much interested in linking with those other projects. And you already heard some through GEO introduced earlier in the introduction from Stephen Ramage from GEO, EO for SDGs, etc. There's of course work from many institutions, and it's great to see folks from many of these institutions on the call at the moment. Again, as I mentioned before, one thing we hope to do through this competition is to facilitate broader collaboration in order to address some of the gaps that we've seen around data analytics. So if we could go to the next slide, there should be a poll on there. And so just be curious to see, of course, I do recognize some folks on the line. It's great to see some new participants as well. But if we could bring that poll up on screen, I'd just be interested to see how many folks thus far are already involved in Working Group 3 of GEO-LDN. You should see that on your screen now.
And we've got 75% have already voted, and I'll close the poll in another 5 seconds or so. So hurry up and vote. Okay, I'm going to close the poll with 78% having voted. And you can see the results.
Excellent, interesting. Okay, so it looks like we've got, what is that, 17% are already involved in GEO-LDN. It looks like 66% are new to this, which is great to see that we've gotten a broad group on the line and many folks who are new to Working Group 3. So welcome, and great to have you on board, and we look forward to working with you. So if we go to the next slide, and in a moment, I'm going to get a bit more into the details of the competition. But before I do, I just wanted to give a bit more perspective. As you heard from Baron, what we very much are interested in doing through this competition is supporting the development of tools that can link with the existing program of work in this space. So there is, as I mentioned before, there are institutions involved in the process. We hope to bring new ones in as well. But what we've been doing through Working Group 3 of GEO-LDN is trying to link with many of these existing institutions. And I just want to show on the next slide what we're building towards in Working Group 3 is this idea of an integrated data platform. So a data analytics platform for LDN. And so what you see here, and I'm not going to go through this, of course, in detail given the time we have here, but the idea is we're looking at trying to build a system that can address various needs across scales, as we mentioned, from the various users that we work with. But at the same time, we're looking at having something that is very much modular as well, so that the various components can work together. And as you saw in a prior slide, we're very much interested in free and open source tools. And what we're looking at trying to do through this data analytics platform is to build an integrated system where, for example, there may be alternative land use planning tools that may be used in different parts of the world where users can easily link with those various tools while at the same time being able to draw on, for example, maybe trends.earth, collect earth, the other tools that are existing to support achievement of LDN. So if we can go to the next slide. So it should be clear by now, but where does the GEO-LDN competition fit in? Of course, very much it's, the idea here is to address what we've identified as a gap, which is around being able to integrate a neutrality mechanism into existing land use planning tools and to be able to link that tool with the existing ecosystem of tools to support LDN. So I want to show one example, if we can go to the next slide. And you would have seen in the competition rules mention of trends.earth. As I mentioned before, we're looking at trying to build, again, a modular system here. So now we're back at that same slide you saw before, but I've outlined in those red boxes that's showing some of the areas that trends.earth fits into. So I'll show you in a second a little bit more detail on what exactly trends.earth does. But I just wanted to highlight this to show you one example of how a tool may address some components of what we've identified as needs to achieve LDN. And there's one of the requirements of this competition is actually to be able to link with trends.earth. So if you're not familiar with the tool, see the website is literally trends.earth, and you can access more information on that tool there. If we go to the next slide. So trends.earth is a tool that was developed, led by Conservation International in collaboration with many partners, including NASA, Lund University, and others, with support from the GEF and NASA, and of course, key collaboration with the UNCCD. And over 3,000 users are now using the tool. The focus is originally on supporting users to be able to use global data sets as well as local information to calculate the indicators for SDG 15.3.1, which is, of course, land degradation neutrality. So it's a free and open source tool. It's implemented in Quantum GIS or QGIS, which is a free and open source GIS software. If we go to the next slide, the focus again is on supporting users in integrating those 3 different indicators for SDG 15.3.1. I'm not going to go through the details here, but basically integrating remote sensing data sets with local information so users can take advantage of the best available information they have to assess indicator 15.3.1. To the next slide. What does this look like? It means you can, of course, draw on global data and click ahead. And within so to the next slide. And from that global data, you can focus in on an area, for example, Kenya. If we click again, you can zoom in on Kenya. This is now looking at the land degradation productivity indicator for Kenya. The next slide will show integration of soil organic carbon. The next slide will show integration of land cover, and then finally, calculation of the final SDG 15.3.1 indicator. So basically it's an interface within QGIS where you can integrate that information and ultimately produce a final report to support. For example, it could be reporting to the UNCCD or to the SDG. It could be for reporting nationally, but the idea is to allow users to easily integrate information around SDG 15.3.1. So now I'm going to shift a bit and go more into the details of the GEO-LDN competition, which I'm sure you're all very excited to hear. And so if we go ahead, I want to go back a little bit to, and this is of course harking back to what you already saw from Baron earlier, but I just wanted to stress that the first bullet point here, what's the challenge of the competition? A key point here is to implement or support the implementation of a neutrality mechanism for LDN. So that's something that the judges are going to be very closely looking at when we're evaluating proposals and the final tools. So certainly I would suggest, we will be sharing slides, but definitely look back at the information Baron shared. There's also some links in the the competition rules document as well to the framework for land degradation neutrality. There's a lot of good information in there to look back at. So that's one of the key requirement, I would say, but there are four. Secondly, is we're looking for something that works within a well-established open source model. Thirdly, that has the capacity to analyze trade-offs in land use planning. And then fourthly, that can be adapted for use by other modeling tools. Now, if we go to the next slide, just to stress this a little bit more, we're really very much going to be focused on this neutrality mechanism component. So go to the next slide. And I just want to go back to, as Baron said, what are we talking about when we think about a neutrality mechanism? So if you remember Baron's words, he talked about a balanced approach. So the question really here is, we're looking for a tool that can support users in anticipating new degradation, even as we plan to reverse past degradation. So basically the question is, how can we actually have a tool that allows users to analyze these two components and to better understand and plan to support achievement of land degradation neutrality? What I showed you earlier, trends.earth, does not do this. Trends.earth, although there's a requirement to link with that tool, trends.earth really is focused around currently more assessment of those three indicators. So this is really something that's new and very much required to support achievement of LDN. So that's why this neutrality mechanism is something that we're so interested in here. And actually you can skip the next slide for time, but so this is a slide, again, definitely recommend looking back at Baron's presentation from earlier. If you continue through the competition document, you'll see there's some other requirements. Another one I want to highlight is design with the user. We're very much interested in seeing, we don't want solutions that are developed solely by, for example, a coder without connection with stakeholders. We want to make sure that there's direct connection with users of these tools. And to ensure that you'll see that's why there is a requirement that the proposals be from consortia, where there are technical implementers and collaboration with stakeholders, direct users of these land use planning tools. To the next slide. Why do you want to participate in this? Well, there's going to be some benefits that all who participate will receive. One, of course, is the potential for feedback from end users. We will facilitate, as I'll address in a second, direct connections among those who may have more of a background on the technical side or more on the user side. And there's also, of course, part of the idea here is to facilitate better connections among GEO-LDN as well. So there's much expertise represented here on the line and within the GEO-LDN community, and this will give you a key opportunity to link with that. We can go ahead. I also want to highlight there's been a new offer. The top 3 competitors will benefit from a 2-year free license for unlimited access to Google Earth Engine. So this is a great benefit as well for the top 3. And there will also be direct support around Earth observation data science from an outreach program that Google Earth Engine has. So that's an exciting benefit that was recently announced. What do the winners get? On the next slide. So of course the winners from the competition will have, this is really an exciting opportunity because through connections with GEO-LDN and UNCCD, there's the opportunity to directly connect with over 120 countries that have already committed to set targets around land degradation neutrality. So huge opportunity to connect globally with potential users of the tool. You'll also have the opportunity to showcase the tools. The top 3 competitors will at the 15th session of the UNCCD Conference of the Parties and at GeoWeek 2021. Actually, sorry, this is for the winner. We'll have that opportunity. The top 3 competitors will actually be at the CRIC, the Committee for Review of the Implementation of the Convention. And then, of course, most excitingly, the winner will have the ability to access financial and technical support that we've valued at over $100,000 US to transform the prototype into an operational tool. So huge opportunities from participating in the competition. So next slide. What's the timeline? There have been some recent changes here. So do make sure you keep up to date on the website online. The first one I want to highlight, of course, is proposals are due on the 31st of August. There will be a number of interim events, a virtual pitch event, and then also, of course, the final award at the Committee for the Review of the Implementation, or the CRIC, in the first quarter of 2021. And of course, you can access this online. Next slide. For time, again, do make sure you review the timeline online. We can skip this slide and this slide. Of course, if there's questions, do let us know. I just want to make sure we have time for those questions. And a little bit more details. There will be 3 key events: a pitch event, a sneak preview, and a demo session. And so one thing that's unique about this competition is there will be the chance to get direct feedback, both from judges as well as the end users along the way. So do look at the competition document as far as what expectations are for those 3 events. The pitch event, which is coming up on, I believe, well, you will see the timeline online. I can't find it in my notes, but the pitch event, what we expect is, of course, not a finished tool, but that competitors should outline the key elements of their proposal, which was, again, that's due on August 31st, how you respond to the key elements of the challenge, those 4 bullets I outlined earlier, and the expected final state of your tool at the end of the competition. The sneak preview will be an interim step where you'll be able to get interim feedback directly from competitors. And then, of course, at the final session, we'll expect a demo where all functionality is actually complete and available in the tool. We can go to the next slide. Just to highlight how you will be judged, and all of this, again, is in the competition document. But the judge's decision is final. Who are the judges? The judges will be composed of, there'll be some members of the GEO-LDN community, of course, from Working Group 3, as well as more broadly. And there will be some others on the expert panel as well to represent, for example, the SPI, the Science Policy Interface, to the UNCCD, other key stakeholders. We have a scoring rubric that we outline here, from excellent through to reject if there are key requirements that are not met. Go to the next slide. And again, just to highlight here, these are 4 bullets you see at the beginning of the document are requirements. If those are not met, then proposals are not eligible for an award. So do make sure you look through the rules. And then also, one thing I want to highlight here as well is we are looking for open source solutions. So there's some text to review. We don't expect to take copyright from entrants. Copyright will be retained by the tool developers, but tools must be released under an open source license. Go to the next slide. Where are we on time? given where we are on time, I would say definitely review the competition rules. I'm not going to read through these in detail, but you will be judged on 3 different categories. The first will be excellence, which has to do with the scientific basis of the tool, linkage with the SBI document that's been released on the framework for LDN. I can go to the next slide. We do also have criteria around impact as well. So these have to do with the data sets that the tool uses, potential for broader uptake of the tool, demonstration of stakeholder support for the tool. Again, that's something that's very key here. We very much want to make sure that users are involved in the design process. And if we go to the next slide, the last criteria is around implementation. And this is where we'll be looking at, for example, how the tool links with other existing tools, usage of technologies like cloud computing. Also want to highlight the final bullet there around FAIR data principles. If you're not familiar with FAIR, definitely do your homework there, but basically has to do with ensuring that metadata for the tool, the data sets that the tool access, the code are free and fairly available. And now I think the next slide is my last slide. Oh, whoops, no, sorry. Eligibility. Who can compete in this? Anyone can. Do just want to make the one point that, of course, if you're affiliated with one of the organizations directly involved in GEO-LDN leadership, there's a limitation on receiving the financial component of the award. That, of course, is not possible. And again, as I mentioned at the beginning, this is a competition where there is a requirement that competitors enter as a consortium where there's at least one technical implementer and at least one representative of a subnational stakeholder group. And to facilitate that, if we go to the next slide, we do have support for those interested in finding either technical implementers or stakeholder groups to link with. If you go to geoldn.org/forum, you'll see on the GEO-LDN website, there's a link to the forum. There's a login link and a sign up link. You'll see right there on the right hand of the slide. First time you go, just click on sign up, and there will be a number of topics where you can post some information about yourself, about what it is you're looking for. There's some guidance you'll see there, and we will facilitate connecting with others if you're looking at finding people to join a consortium with you. So I think that's all I have. So I'll pass back to you, Neil, for questions.
Great, thanks so much, Alex. So I think we need to wrap up at about 1/2 the hour. And so what I'd like to do is we had an item on the agenda to connect up with individuals and other people of interest on this call. What I think we might do is probably save that for an offline process. And please contact us through that website that Alex just showed us, and register your interest. And I think we might have to connect people up that way. We have a few minutes for questions now, and we've got 2 in already. So if there are any more questions really on the sort of the technical or the implementation side of this, then please do send those questions in now. We've got a question here already. Who would fund the project implementation? So I think Alex may be able to help me out with this one. I think the funds that we have available are really to help get these tools implemented and live in terms of connecting possibly with TransEarth or some other system like that, and getting them out to the end users. Is that correct?
That is correct. There is also support, and I want to highlight, so the virtual pitch event, which is September 30, there will be support. So at that point, and again, you'll see this in the rules, we'll be selecting the top 10 competitors to move on to the next stage. And at that stage, there is some seed funding that is available for ideas from individuals or micro businesses. So there is some seed funding money that will be available to support development of those tools that advance from the virtual pitch event.
Yeah, great, thank you. And another question is the breakdown between financial and technical support for the winner. Well, again, we have this process of selecting 10 of the best proposals and then whittling that down to 3 and then selecting a winner from that cohort. It's a bit, the technical support, I think will come from, interactions with the likes of us here, but also with other people in the community here who put their hands up to act as technical support in the sort of the matchmaking process there. Does anyone have anything else to add to that? I think I've covered that okay. And not
I'd just like to add that it will also depend very much on the quality and the final functionalities offered by the prototype. So we'll assess the status of the winning prototype and then see how best to use the available resources to make it fully operational and bring it to scale.
Yes, thanks, Sarah. That's a good point. So I guess in summary, the funding that's available here is not really prize money so much. It's money to support the implementation of these tools and get them out there and being used. And if I can just take you back to those numbers in case any of you need more inspiration again, we've got 123 countries signing up to set targets for land degradation neutrality. All of those countries are looking for tools to support their planning. And this is one way to see if we can provide that. We did have questions earlier about whether a competition of this kind was actually kind of the best forum to come up with the tools like this. And my view is that it's one way to explore coming up with tools that we're looking for. And it's something that we thought we'd like to try. We do hope that it's of interest to you, and we're really looking forward to seeing who's out there and who's got something to contribute. So we've got a couple more questions coming in. I'll give it another couple of minutes for the question and answer sessions. Can the team be composed from different nationalities to apply for this competition? Absolutely, I think is the answer. You can. It's not a national competition. What we're after is tools that implement the best science and that address the challenge that Baron described in terms of how to plan to achieve neutrality, and that meet the needs in terms of slotting in with the tools that are already available. So I hope that answers your question there. The short answer there is yes. And Vanya, I think, I'm sorry if I've pronounced your name wrong. I apologise for being Australian. We're not good with other people's names. You've all got funny accents and things. I suppose it's okay if we already have intended end users in our consortium. That is perfectly fine. In fact, that's great. If you're already working with end users and trying to implement a tool there to meet their needs, then that's a fantastic thing. And I presume that there'll be other similar problems needing to be addressed globally. So it would be interesting to see how that applies globally. And probably the last question before we wrap this up from Alan, and applicants must cover or mobilize the needed resources for app development themselves. Is that right? I guess the answer to that again is yes. Alex, let me know if I've got this wrong here. But what we're after really is to be able to see what it is, get a sense of how the tool that you're proposing we should integrate into the remainder of the LDN system, a bit about what it looks like, perhaps a bit about how it works. So it's got to get up to a certain level of development, I suppose, before it becomes an integrated tool. That said, we did discuss actually the great value of someone proposing a science framework that didn't have much sort of software tool around it, if you know what I mean. The science of neutrality, I think, is still developing, and the ways to use to implement it operationally are still they're emerging. And so it doesn't necessarily need to be a very schmick software tool at this stage. And this is why we thought that perhaps connecting people up across cohorts from, developers and scientists and land managers, land planners, for example, might be something really useful there to progress some of those tools that are in various points on that sort of scale into something that's a bit more integrated and usable operationally. Thank you so much for all those fantastic questions. They're really useful for us. And I hope we've answered them okay. There was a comment in the web chat there. Someone asked about joining the GEO-LDN group, and there is, and Sarah has pointed to our new website, which is looking fantastic. If you've got any other questions that you need to ask, please do also go to that website, and you can contact myself or any of the other co-leads there, and we'll be really happy to answer your questions. At least we'll be really happy to answer the first 75 questions. If you're question number 78, it might get a bit long, but we hope to get lots of questions though anyway. So hopefully that's of interest to you. What I'd like to do now, I think we do need to wrap it up. And so I think we have yes, unfortunately, I don't think we had time for that. Was there a poll or something that we needed to do in the connection part that is still worth doing, Sarah or Michael, do you think?
We wanted to check whether people changed their mind about participating in the competition.
That is correct.
We also have less attendees than at the beginning, so maybe we can skip that and just have a look at these wrap-up slides very quickly.
Yes, for sure. Okay. And would you like me to chair this, the wrap-up part? Since how I'm doing such a great job. Okay, sure. Let's work through the slides then, shall we? Yes, please. Next slide, please, Michael. So you'll see there's an online application form. There's a competition website there. And please do have a look at that. Note those details down now. We have the timeline, of course, with COVID, really blowing a hole in people's timelines all over the world. At this stage, some of those later dates are perhaps a bit aspirational, but I hope they're not. But please do keep your eye on that. There may be some adjustments to those later dates, but we believe that we can have the pitch event and other things basically as described on that system there. So your GEO-LDN website is basically the key there. Next slide, please, Michael.
And the next slide is what feedback do you have for us on the session today? Please, in the text chat, just a simple question. How was this event for you? What did you like? What can we improve on in the future? And yeah, feel free to type into the text chat your feedback to us about this event, about this live online session. Thank you, Sudesh and Vanyav. Thank you.
Excellent. It's great to see a few people. Well, Kristen, thank you very much. It's nice to know that we conveyed a bit of information that's useful to you there. I hope we can keep in touch with this one. And look, from me, thank you all very much. Please do keep in touch with us and do ask any more questions. We're really excited about this competition. We're really excited to see what you can bring to it. And we think this is a great opportunity to really improve, the conditions of our environment across a large chunk of the globe. So thank you all very much for your attendance. Michael, do you have anything to wrap up?
I just would like to ask Galaxy A5 to reveal their real name, perhaps in the text chat, so we can follow up. Thank you for your feedback, Galaxy A5 2017. Please type in your name so we can identify you. And thank you very much, Neil, and all the speakers today.
No worries. So I think possibly we can leave the chat line open for a minute longer or so, but then otherwise we'll wrap it up and we'll talk to you all again very soon. Thanks very much for your time.